The teacup handle faced left, and in that house, nothing was ever out of place by accident. Kiara Lawson, a Black American woman with $43 and a suitcase, walked through the service entrance of the most powerful Mafia estate in Seoul. She came as a maid. She wore the black and beige uniform. She scrubbed floors for people who compared her to a dog when they thought she couldn't understand Korean. She understood every word. Cha Tae-wook, the Obsidian Crane, the man with the black crane tattoo climbing his neck and a dark suit that never wrinkled, ran that house with silence sharper than any blade. He didn't notice the maid, not until she spotted a transmitter his entire security team had missed, hidden inside a sugar bowl that someone had placed with the wrong hand. Now a woman who was hired to clean rooms is the only person in the mansion who sees what everyone else refuses to look at. The most dangerous man in Seoul just asked her not to leave. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The iron gate swallowed the taxi's headlights, and Kiara Lawson stood alone on the gravel path with a single suitcase and $43 left to her name. The Cha estate rose ahead. Dark stone, sculpted hedges, silence so thick it pressed against her eardrums. She adjusted the strap of her small black leather crossbody bag, straightened the collar of her camel wool coat, and walked toward the service entrance. A woman in a gray housekeeping dress opened the door before Kiara could knock. Short, compact, silver hair, pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to lift the skin at her temples. A brass key ring hung at her waist and clinked once when she stepped aside. "You're the American, not a question." Kiara Lawson. "The agency sent my paperwork last. I read it." Bae Sun-ja looked her over, the way a butcher inspects a cut of meat, assessing weight, usefulness, how long it would last. "Follow me." The service corridor ran behind the main hall, narrow, fluorescent lit, smelling of cedar polish. Sun-ja walked without looking back, her voice flat and practiced. "You eat in the staff kitchen, 6:30 sharp. You sleep on the 3rd floor, east wing. You clean what I assign, when I assign it. You do not rearrange. You do not improvise." Kiara matched her pace. "Understood. Don't talk to guests. Don't ask questions." Sun-ja stopped at a supply closet, pulled a folded uniform from a shelf, black dress, beige collar and cuffs, wrapped in plastic. She held it out. "If you hear something, forget it." Kiara took the uniform. The plastic crinkled in the quiet. "I can keep quiet," she said. "Forgetting is another thing." Sun-ja's eyes narrowed, but her expression remained unmoved. She turned and kept walking. "You're Korean. How much?" "Enough for the subway." It was a lie. 4 years of Korean at Georgetown, a summer in Busan on a linguistics grant, fluency sharp enough to parse dialect across provinces. But she'd learned long ago that people reveal themselves faster when they believe you can't understand them. The first week taught her the mansion's rhythms. Dawn, the kitchen staff arrived through the lower entrance. 7 o'clock, Sun-ja inspected every room with a clipboard. 9, Cha Mi-suk descended the main staircase in structured navy, her jade brooch catching the foyer light, and took breakfast alone. Kiara cleaned around the matriarch's schedule the way water flows around stone, present but never touching. On the 3rd morning, a group of businessmen arrived for a lunch meeting. One of them, a man with a wide silk tie and a louder voice than the room required, watched Kiara set the table. "They hire foreigners now?" he said in Korean, leaning toward his colleague. "What next? A dog for the sommelier?" Kiara placed the last water glass, aligned it with the knife's edge, and left the room. Her expression gave away nothing. Her hands stayed steady. In the corridor, she pressed her back against the wall, closed her eyes for 3 seconds, then continued to the next task. She heard worse by the 5th day. Comments about her skin, her hair, whether she could read the labels on the cleaning products, always in Korean, always with the smug certainty that she was deaf to every word. She cataloged each voice, each face. On the seventh night, the house changed. Kiara was folding linens in the third-floor closet when the lower gate ground open past midnight. Two vehicles, heavy engines. She pressed her face to the narrow window and saw a tall figure being helped from a black sedan by a man with a military fade and a scar across his right cheekbone. Oh Min-kyu, from the security briefing Sunja had made her memorize. The man he supported moved with controlled effort, one hand pressed below his ribs, a dark stain spreading across a slate-gray dress shirt. Cha Tae-wook walked through the front door without a sound of pain, but his jaw was locked tight enough to crack teeth. Kiara returned to her linens. Heard something? Forget it. She folded the last pillowcase with precision and went to bed. By morning, the household acted as though nothing had happened. Sunja's clipboard, Misuk's breakfast. The rhythm continued, but Kiara noticed a new detail. Min-kyu now stood outside the study door, which had been unlocked and unguarded the day before. She was assigned to clean the study that afternoon. Min-kyu stepped aside without a word, and she entered with her cart. Walnut and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a wide desk with brass fittings. A tea tray sat on the side table. Kiara lifted the cloth to gather the cups and stopped. The handle of the porcelain teacup faced left. Every cup she'd washed in this house, every single one, had been set handle right by the kitchen staff. Sunja enforced it like liturgy, and the napkin beneath the saucer was folded into a rectangle. The kitchen folded triangles, always. She set the cloth down, didn't touch the tray. Instead, she examined the sugar bowl without lifting it, tilting her head to look at the base through the gap between bowl and saucer. A faint rectangular outline sat beneath the porcelain, something adhered to the underside, no larger than a thumbnail. The study door opened. Tae-wook entered first, his dark charcoal suit impeccable despite whatever his body carried underneath. The edge of a black crane tattoo rose from his collar along the right side of his neck. Min-kyu followed, his hand instinctively near his hip. She should have stepped back with the cart and disappeared into the corridor. Instead, she spoke. That tray wasn't prepared by the kitchen. Min-kyu's reaction was immediate. Who asked for your opinion? Nobody. Kiara kept her eyes on Tae-wook. But there's a transmitter inside the sugar bowl. 4 seconds of silence. Tae-wook held her gaze, then nodded to Min-kyu. Min-kyu lifted the sugar bowl, turned it over. A micro-transmitter, matte black, no larger than a SIM card, pressed against the porcelain with adhesive putty. He set the bowl in a signal-blocking pouch and looked at Kiara as though she'd pulled a weapon. How did you see what my men missed? Tae-wook's voice was low, unhurried, a man accustomed to answers arriving at his pace. Because nobody watches who cleans the room after everyone leaves. Tae-wook studied her for a long moment. Something shifted behind his expression. Not warmth, not yet, but the recognition of a mind that operated on the same frequency as threat. He turned to Min-kyu. Find out who accessed this room after the last meeting. Every name, every minute. Then, to Kiara, what's your name? Kiara Lawson. Don't leave the house tonight, Kiara Lawson. He walked past her toward the desk, and the scent of cedar and black tea trailed behind him like a quiet declaration. This conversation was not over. The next morning, Kiara found him waiting in the library. No pretense, no preamble. Tae-wook told her what he wanted, her eyes in every room he couldn't watch, her attention on every detail that shifted when certain guests arrived. She set down the dustcloth and faced him. No. The word landed between them like a closed door. Tae-wook tilted his head, more curious than offended. I won't spy on people who haven't done anything wrong, she said. Not the kitchen staff, not the drivers, not the gardeners who look at the ground every time your uncle walks past. He studied her for a long moment, and something in his expression changed, not softened, but sharpened, as though he were seeing a blade where he'd expected glass. Then tell me what you need. 3 conditions. She counted them on her fingers with the calm precision of someone who had rehearsed this conversation in the dark hours before dawn. First, no one would be punished on suspicion alone. If she noticed something, he investigated before acting. Second, he would tell her about real dangers, not leave her blind in a house full of teeth. Third, he would never use his position to force her to stay. Tae-wook was quiet. In 8 years leading the Cha family, no one, not his mother, not his uncle, not the men who carried guns beneath their jackets, had ever set terms for him. Agreed, he said. And for the first time, the word felt like it cost him something. The conversations began without either of them planning it. Kiara studied late in the kitchen after the house fell silent. Hotel administration textbooks spread across the marble counter, a cold cup of tea beside her notes. Tae-wook appeared the first night for water, the second night for tea. By the third night, he simply sat across from her and asked what she was reading. She told him about revenue management, occupancy algorithms, the architecture of hospitality. He listened the way he listened, to everything, completely, without interruption, cataloging each detail. You weren't always a maid, he said. I was assistant director at the Regency Continental in London. She turned a page without looking up. 3 years, youngest person in that role in the hotel's history. What happened? The pen stopped. I told the truth to the wrong people, and I learned that honesty without power is just a confession. He didn't press. Instead, the following week, Oh Min-kyu delivered a folder to his desk, documents Tae-wook had obtained through channels Kiara would never ask about, evidence that could restore what had been taken from her. She refused it. I don't want your money, she said. I don't want your favors. I want to earn my way back on terms no one can take from me again. He closed the folder and placed it in the bottom drawer of his desk. He didn't argue, but the folder stayed. The changes were small at first. He called her Kiara instead of Miss Lawson. He carried his own teacup to the kitchen instead of leaving it for staff. When a visiting associate snapped his fingers at one of the housekeepers, Tae-wook stopped mid-conversation and said, without raising his voice, "She has a name. Use it or leave." Sunja noticed everything. The old housekeeper found Kiara polishing silver one afternoon and sat beside her. The jade ring he keeps in the study, Sunja said quietly. It belonged to his grandmother. She was the only woman who ever held real authority in this family. He doesn't show it to anyone. She paused. He showed it to you. Kiara said nothing, but her hands went still. The dinner changed everything. 7 guests, imported wine, the long table gleaming beneath the chandelier. Kiara served in silence, invisible in the practiced way that good service demands. A man named Director Huang, flushed, loud, 3 glasses past discretion, reached for his glass and knocked it sideways. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like a wound. He looked at Kiara. Kneel down and clean my shoes. The table went quiet. Kiara's fingers tightened around the serving tray. Before she could speak, Tae-wook picked up a linen napkin from his own place setting and held it out to the man. You spilled it, Tae-wook said. You clean it. Director Huang's face went from red to white. No one at the table breathed. He took the napkin. Afterward, in the corridor outside the kitchen, Kiara caught Tae-wook's arm. I don't need you to save me. I know. Then why did you interfere? He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. Because allowing him to humiliate you in my house would mean agreeing with him, and I don't. She let go. He walked away. Neither of them mentioned it again, but something between them had shifted past the point where it could be unnamed. The pattern revealed itself slowly. Every time Seungpil visited, Documents vanished from the study. Shipping manifests, financial ledgers, correspondence with overseas accounts. Every room he entered was cleaned twice, once by the regular staff, once by two men who arrived in an unmarked car and left within the hour. Kiara tracked the absences like a balance sheet. Column by column, visit by visit, the numbers told a story the family refused to read. She found the ledger page on a Thursday. It was hidden inside the false bottom of an antique desk in the East Wing, a single sheet of paper, handwritten, detailing transfers that matched the dates of every incident Cha Tae-wook had survived in the past 2 years. The ambush on the coastal road, the poisoned shipment, the informant who vanished, Seung Pil's handwriting, Seung Pil's accounts. A smart woman would know when to pretend she didn't see something. His voice came from the doorway. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't needed to. Seung Pil stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gold signet ring catching the lamplight, and his eyes held the flat patience of a man who had buried problems quieter than this. Kiara folded the page and slipped it into her apron pocket. Her pulse hammered against her ribs, but her voice came out steady, almost conversational. A smart man would know that underestimating a maid was his first mistake. The call came at 6 in the morning. 3 sharp knocks on her door, then Bae Sun-ja's voice, tight, clipped, stripped of every warmth it had ever carried. Kiara, the study, now. She dressed in under 2 minutes. The hallway felt longer than usual, the marble floor colder beneath her flats. When she reached the study, the door was already open, and the room was full. Cha Mi-suk sat in the high-backed chair near the window, her jade brooch catching the early light. Seung Pil stood by the desk, arms folded, his gold signet ring tapping against his elbow in a slow, satisfied rhythm. Oh Min-kyu flanked the doorway behind her, not blocking it, but close enough to make the point. And Tae-wook stood at the center of the room, his back to the fireplace, his face unreadable. On the desk lay 3 things: a velvet box containing the Cha family ring, a printed bank statement, and a manila folder thick with photocopied transfers. "Explain," Mi-suk said. Kiara looked at the items. She had never seen the bank statement before. The account bore her name, her passport number, and a balance of 412 million won. The ring sat in its box like a small, gleaming accusation. "I've never opened a bank account in Korea," Kiara said, "and I've never touched that ring." Seung Pil uncrossed his arms. "The ring was found in your quarters this morning during a routine security check. The account was flagged by our financial auditor 3 days ago." He adjusted his reading glasses, letting them drop back against his chest. "The deposits match amounts missing from 2 of our subsidiary accounts. Embezzlement, Miss Lawson. Potentially espionage. The question is who you're working for." "Nobody." Her voice stayed level. "Because none of this is mine." "The evidence disagrees," Mi-suk said. She turned to Tae-wook. "I want her arrested, tonight." The room waited. Kiara watched Tae-wook's jaw tighten, a single, almost invisible movement. He picked up the ring from the desk, turned it between his fingers for 3 long seconds, then set it back down. "No arrest," he said. Mi-suk's eyes narrowed. "Tae-wook." "She leaves the residence. Tonight, Min-kyu will escort her to the gate with her belongings. That's the end of it." The words landed like a verdict. Not a defense, not a question, a ruling, delivered with the same cold authority he used in every boardroom and back alley negotiation she had ever witnessed. Kiara searched his face for something. A crack, a signal, a flicker of the man who had placed 3 conditions on a napkin and promised her honesty. She found nothing. Seung Pil allowed himself a small, careful nod, a measured decision. "Get out," Tae-wook said to his uncle. "All of you." They filed out one by one. Mi-suk paused at the threshold, her silver chignon catching the hallway light. "This is what happens," she said quietly, "when you bring strangers into a family house." Then she was gone. The study door closed. It was just the two of them now, and the silence was worse than the accusation. "You know I didn't do this," Kiara said. Tae-wook's gaze held hers, steady, controlled, giving away absolutely nothing. "The evidence is clear, Kiara. The evidence is a lie, and you're smart enough to know it." He said nothing. His hand rested on the edge of the desk, inches from the fake ring, and he did not move. She felt something collapse inside her chest, not dramatically, not with noise, but like a building settling into its own foundation, slow and final. She had prepared herself for the family's rejection. She had expected Mi-suk's contempt, Sung-pil's scheming, the cold mathematics of a world that measured people by bloodline and bank balance. What she had not prepared for was this, the one person who had promised transparency, choosing silence instead. "I knew this house wouldn't trust me," she said. Her voice did not waver. She wouldn't give the walls that satisfaction. "What I didn't expect was discovering you were just like all of them." Tae-wook's fingers curled against the wood. His lips parted, then pressed shut again. The words he needed to say, that the ring was a replica, that the real one bore a hairline crack along the inner band, that every piece of planted evidence pointed back to his uncle's financial fingerprints. Those words stayed locked behind his teeth. Because if he spoke them now, Sung-pil would shred the originals, vanish the accounts, and disappear behind 3 layers of lawyers before morning. The trap only worked if the hunter looked fooled. But the cost of that silence stood in front of him, gathering her dignity like armor, and he could not tell her why. Kiara turned and walked out of the study without looking back. Min-kyu was waiting in the hallway with a single suitcase, her things already packed, folded with military precision. He handed her a plane ticket. Seoul to Los Angeles, departing in 9 hours. "For what it's worth," Min-kyu said, his scar pulling tight as he spoke, "I don't think you did it. That makes one person in this house willing to say it out loud." She took the ticket, the front gate opened with a mechanical hum, and the gravel crunched beneath her shoes as she crossed the courtyard for the last time. The morning air smelled like pine and wet stone, and somewhere behind her, a door closed. In the back seat of the waiting car, Kiara pressed her forehead against the cool window and made her decision. She would not fight this. Not here, not on their ground, not in a country where powerful men rearranged reality and called it justice. She would fly home, rebuild, and never again hand someone the power to decide her worth with a silence. The car pulled away from the Cha estate, and the iron gates shrank in the rearview mirror until they were nothing but a dark line against the sky. Somewhere inside that house, a man who had never believed the lie sat alone in his study, holding a counterfeit ring, and understood for the first time that protecting someone and losing them could be the exact same act. The knock came at 7 in the morning, 3 hours before Kiara's flight. She opened the door, expecting a delivery driver. Han Ye-rin stood in the hallway, holding a manila folder against her chest like a shield, her frameless glasses catching the overhead light. No burgundy briefcase, no composure. Her lipstick was bitten at the edges, and the folder trembled in her grip. "You need to cancel your flight." Kiara leaned against the doorframe. "I don't need to do anything for that family. This isn't about the family." Ye-rin glanced down the corridor, then stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She laid the folder on the kitchen counter and opened it. Corporate transfer documents, time-stamped wire receipts, a board resolution draft with Sung-pil's signature already in place. "My father owes the Cha Group 40 million won from a construction deal that went sideways in 2014. Sung-pil bought that debt. He told my father the marriage would erase it." Kiara didn't touch the papers. "So you came to tell me you're a victim too?" "I came because I found something worse." Ye-rin pulled a single sheet from the bottom of the stack, a seating chart for the upcoming council meeting, annotated in Seungpil's handwriting. Tae-wook's chair was circled in red. Beside it, a note. Security rotation, 4-minute window. He's not trying to take control through a vote. He's planning to remove Tae-wook permanently. The room went quiet. Kiara picked up the seating chart and studied the handwriting she'd seen 100 times on household requisition forms. The same slant. The same pressed hard periods. She knew that hand the way only someone who'd sorted a man's mail for 2 years could know it. The document room on the 3rd floor, Kiara said. He moved files out of there 3 weeks ago. I watched the boxes leave. Ye-rin sat down. I have subpoena-grade access to the corporate servers. If we can match the missing files to the digital trail, then we have the full picture. Kiara set the paper down. Not for him, not for anyone in that house, for the truth. They worked through the morning. Ye-rin pulled server logs while Kiara mapped every anomaly she'd cataloged during her months in the mansion. The late-night meetings, the security gaps, the payments routed through hotel subsidiaries that never had guests. By noon, they had a timeline. By 2 o'clock, they had proof. The council meeting convened at 6. Kiara walked through the mansion's front door for the second time in her life. The first had been through the service entrance. Minkyu flanked her left side, his jaw set, his earpiece silent. Ye-rin walked on her right, carrying the burgundy briefcase now filled with evidence instead of contracts. The council room fell silent. 12 chairs around a mahogany table, every one of them occupied by someone who had never learned her last name. Seungpil spoke first. He projected photographs onto the wall screen, fabricated bank transfers, doctored timestamps. The Maid stole from this family. The evidence is clear. Kiara set a USB drive on the table. Minkyu connected it to the room's system. Wire receipts replaced the photographs. Audio recordings filled the silence. Seungpil's voice instructing a subordinate to arrange the security gap. The seating chart appeared last, his handwriting magnified until the red circle around Tae-wook's chair was unmistakable. Are we really letting a maid dictate the destiny of this family? Seungpil's voice cracked on the last word. Mi-suk stood. Her jade brooch caught the chandelier light. She doesn't belong in this room. She's only the maid. Kiara looked directly at her. No anger, no plea. Working for your family never made me inferior. It only allowed me to see everything you were all too busy pretending not to see. Tae-wook reached into his jacket and placed an object on the table. The real jade ring, recovered from the bottom drawer of Seungpil's desk, still wrapped in the cloth Kiara had polished it with. The room understood before anyone spoke. The uncle's face lost its color the way a candle loses its flame, not all at once, but in a slow surrender to something it could no longer fight. Security escorted Seungpil out. Mi-suk remained standing, rigid. Leave this house, she told Kiara. Tae-wook picked up the ring. He crossed the room, past the uncle's empty chair, past his mother's frozen stare, and stopped in front of the woman every person at that table had dismissed. This family spent years believing trust came from blood. The only person who protected this house without wanting its money or power was the woman you refused to see. He held the jade ring between them. Will you stay by my side? Kiara studied his face. As someone you intend to protect, or as someone who has the right to contradict you? It's exactly because you contradict me that this ring should be yours. He placed the jade ring on her finger. She let him, not because she needed permission, but because she'd already decided. 7 months later, Kiara stood before the same council table and presented a restructuring plan for the Cha Group's hotel division. She was hired as director of operations on merit, not on name. Tae-wook dismantled the organization's exploitative networks one contract at a time. Mi-suk, in a hallway one evening, stopped Kiara and said quietly, I spent so long defending our name that I forgot a surname without honor is just a word. The real proposal happened in the kitchen, on a Tuesday, while Kiara was reviewing supply chain reports. Tae-wook set a small box on the counter, a simple band, no jade, no crest. The first ring said you had authority in this family. This one asks if you want to build a life with me, as your wife or as your equal. I wouldn't know how to love you any other way. On the night of the first family dinner she attended as more than staff, Kiara walked through the main door. Mi-suk looked up from the table. Kiara, your place is here. Tae-wook waited at the far end. Kiara sat, not because anyone told her to, but because she chose that chair, that table, that life. The jade ring caught the light and held it. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged by your role instead of your worth? Have you ever trusted someone who chose silence when you needed their words the most? And have you ever walked away from a place that refused to see you, only to return on your own terms? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, trust, and invisible strength, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel